didn't really show up until I went to college. When I was in high school, a lot of my socioeconomic background was showing. I had a scholarship, but my family wasn't wealthy. So, I remember I tell my students in class that when I was at Mater Dei, all my friends, they all had cars their senior year, and I was still taking the bus, and my bus ride was like super long. I was wearing the same pair of pants every day because we had uniforms, and a lot of my classmates didn't have that background. So it didn't kind of click for me until I went to college, where very similarly, like I started looking at what I was interested in and what my background and my identity was. My undergrad experience was really interesting because since I went to private school, when I was in college, there was a lot of cultural expectations for me to do certain STEM fields. So I actually changed my major probably like 5 times. I got into a nursing program at San Diego State, and I dropped out the first semester. And then I went to business because everyone told me, business, you can get a job. And then when I became an accountant, I actually worked at an accounting firm for 3 months, and then I quit because it was so tedious. I was sitting at a desk all day, basically just at a computer, kind of like what we're doing now, but doing taxes and accounting forms. And so my undergraduate experience wasn't really that good until I found a professor. He was also Asian American, and he kind of took me under his wing and told me, hey, like, we don't have a lot of representation. At San Diego State, you're very hard pressed to find um, professors who are Asian American, especially with the demographics. And so I kind of just went under his wing, and he really showed me, kind of what sociology was really about. So I'm really fortunate. If any of you go to San Diego State or are there now, his name is Jung Min Che. He teaches sociology. He's awesome. I definitely recommend him. He's like what I hope to be maybe when I'm like 65. And Lorenzo, I don't
Uh,
know if you want to add to that.
yeah, yeah. I guess, I talked about speech and debate. I just remember like I remember thinking of like making speeches, but like putting on a fake accent and just kind of being creative. I think that's one of the things that really kind of started my interest in writing, and finding a way to be creative and get your ideas out. And I think some of those, some of my favorite teachers were my English teachers. Even though I did, like Dr. Vito, I was integrated biology undergraduate major. I was an ed minor, so I was pursuing that biology science track. At the same time, I was doing dance and culture shock and Filipino community stuff. So I was in Filipino American Alliance at Berkeley, and then also a bunch of dance organizations like Dance Junta, Dance Works, the Movement, Cal Hawaii Club. And so those were really, I was spending hours, like dancing 5 days a week and spending countless hours on that. And I think that sort of gave me a plan B in case I didn't end up feeling that my health career path was giving me enough, uh, was rewarding enough for me. So I think that's one thing that I would love to like impress upon you is to like be open to the way that your life leads you or your career trajectory leads you, because you really never know what can happen, and um, what kind of opportunities will spring up. In terms of, um, are we on the why did you pursue grad school question, or we didn't get there yet?
I think we can transition into that if you'd like to start that one off.
Yeah. What did I pursue? Okay. So one thing that I think they don't really talk about is I mean, as an undergrad, I don't think I really got a clear sense of what grad school meant. I know people were in grad school. I didn't know what it meant to get a master's versus a PhD. I didn't know that you could teach, college with a master's or with a PhD, or I didn't know what the different programs meant or how to look for different programs. So I would say that, like, for me, one of the things that helped me, well, why is that I wanted to have a unique stamp on the world. Like, I wanted to be able to have a platform and a space and something sustainable, for me to create and feel like I'm not in a position that anybody else could fit. You know, like I was doing like authorizations in a cancer center, and I felt like, okay, anybody, this is really meaningful work, but anybody could do it if they were trained. And so for me, like being an author or being in front of a classroom was that kind of was a space that I could cultivate and have that unique stamp on the world. What about you, Dr. Vito?
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Honestly, that was probably one of the biggest factors was having a space to write about the things I was actually interested in. And I'm pretty sure it's very similar for you. But when I was in grad school, I had a lot of academics say, "Oh, you can't study hip hop for a living. You can't study barbershops for a living. You can't, like I can't go to concerts or raves or whatever and make research out of it." And so that kind of drove me to go all the way to do my PhD and say, hey, like, this is my research. This is what I'm interested in. I don't care about anything else. And, I think kind of like the research that we both do kind of highlights that, it can be part of our identity and we can kind of choose the research that's meaningful to us. And then also kind of, give that back to the community, especially my students. They always look at me and they're like, oh, this is what you study hip hop for a living. Like, I've never heard of that. And I was like, if anything, there should be more people studying what the stuff that they're interested in, rather than kind of feeling that societal pressure to go to college just to get a job or to be financially stable. And that really drove me to do the research that I do right now.
Right.
Why did you choose to do research on hip hop?
Um, it was actually a crazy story, and I'm really glad you asked that question. I had a professor when I was in my master's program. I was in my last semester, and he was like, "What are you going to do your master's thesis on?" And I told him, "I don't know." And so I was driving through Carl's Jr. drive-through, and I was like, "I have to get my life together and figure out a topic." And there was like this song I really liked on the radio. And I was like, "Why don't I do hip hop?" And I came to him the next day and was like, "If I study hip hop," he's like, "I've never heard of anybody do that." This was like kind of a while ago, at least the kind of hip hop I was listening to. And there you go. And then I just ran with it all the way. What about you?
I actually have to say I forgot to say this. My sister went to UCSD. All three of my sisters went to UCSD. And when I was a senior, no, when I was a junior. When I was a junior or a senior, there was a talent show for KP, and I remember going to the rehearsal, and it was like they were doing like a hip hop or a street dance, and they said, you're here at the rehearsal. Why don't you join it? So I've actually danced in a KP end of the year talent show. I don't know what the name is. It probably has like a specific name, like premiere or something. Yeah, maybe Makasama. And then I also went to the at uh is it at the graduation where they have somebody sit in a chair and everybody says good things about them? Yeah, something like that. I went to that too. So I feel like yeah, P grad. I've been to that P grad and I had to like talk about my sister, like the wind beneath my wings kind of thing. It was great. So I think that was one of the, and also dancing in high school really showed me that this is something I'm good at. This is something I love. I started, it was a really informal start, right? We had garage parties. Dr. Vito probably remembers this. Like there were parties in the garage, and it was just like when all the aunties are playing mahjong in the kitchen, and then all of us kids would be in the garage. It'd be super dark, and there would be like really good music, and that's when I would feel like, oh man, I need to know how to dance if I'm gonna like get in there. And so those are kind of that's like my initial like informal interest in getting into Phil-Am DJs, garage parties. I wasn't in any cotillions or debuts, but I definitely know that that was going on. And I saw, some of the mainstream artists like we used to watch Mickey Mouse Club, so like Didi Magno and Dante Bosco, Lea Salonga, Ernie Reyes Jr. Those people like really inspired me to do more with entertainment and the body. And so I knew that Filipinos and hip hop was something that I was familiar with, but I didn't know how to sustain that relationship. And research, like hip hop is a very high impact um, activity. And so, like, doing research became a way for me to say, okay, this is the long term thing. I can have I can have a relationship with this, with both the Filipino community on one hand and also with the hip hop community on the other, and not have to ice my knees or not have to like always sweat like 150 calories a day. Because I think one of the things is like you probably know is as we're doing Zoom, we have to remember our body, you know, like everything has a toll and we have to really take care of our bodies. Just I mean, I was just reading today that we have to like reduce our eye strain by looking away from the screen every 20 minutes for 20 seconds. I'm like, wow, I'm not doing that enough. And so I think as I'm standing at my desk, I remember like I want to have a continuous relationship with this community, both of them, Filipino community and hip hop community. And research was that activity that allowed me a a long term pathway.
And I'll add to that because when I was originally doing my research, it was mostly just on hip hop. It wasn't until I came back to San Diego that I realized that those two things are really aligned, especially here. And then, putting those two together, you can reach so many more people. You can do so many more things. So definitely agree with that.
So is this the career that you envisioned for yourself when you were younger?
Definitely not. I don't think, I think when I was younger, my mom kept on telling me to be an accountant because she was an accountant. But like I said, I hated that. And definitely, if anyone knows me, I'm good with numbers, but I don't like it. So definitely not what I envisioned. What about you?
You know what? I told you I was like pre-med. When I was in high school, I took one of those tests and it said I was supposed to be an architect because like attention to detail and artistic. I love drawing. But I don't know. I never got into architecture. And then also, then I was like, oh, I want to do something creative, but also tech, uh, science related. So I wanted to be a biomedical engineer. I just like looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, I can make prosthetics. And then that ended up not being what I didn't really, I wasn't good at physics. I was horrible at physics. And so, and also engineering seems super hard. So yeah, so this is totally not what I envisioned, but it's worked out. So I'm really happy.
Yeah, I tell students all the time, like, I don't feel any pressure. Like, if you go to college and you don't have a major or you don't know what you're doing, I think that's a lot of students, and I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. What about, sorry, I'm trying to get back to this. Uh, what do you enjoy about being a professor? And what's your
Yeah.
favorite course to teach?
Oh, let's see. So, right now, for being a professor, I think it's just being able to interact with the community. Kind of giving back. I don't know if I told this part of my story earlier, but I was teaching at like the university level a number of years ago, and then what actually brought me back to San Diego. This was about 5 years now. My mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and for the Filipino community, filial piety and taking care of your family is really, really important. So I moved back to San Diego, and then Southwestern College was, kind of the closest job to where my parents were raised in Imperial Beach. And so, at first I was kind of like, oh, what am I doing? And then I started teaching community college students, and I realized, they have very similar backgrounds to me. And so, it's really inspiring to kind of work with these students and help them find what they're interested in and, what they want to do with their careers. And luckily, I teach Sociology 101, which is like an intro class. And, I think it's going to become more common, but a lot of students have to take it to graduate. So I get a lot of like nursing students, a lot of dental hygiene students, pre-med students. They all have to take the class. And, I find it really rewarding to teach people who don't know anything about sociology and kind of give them a different lens about how the world works, and then kind of throw in hip hop and barbershops and all this other stuff that I do. So I find that really rewarding. What about you?
I was thinking about this question. It's kind of like asking who's your favorite child. It's really unfair of us to have to answer that. So I'm just gonna like sidestep that and say like, I think because I was there the longest in Chicago. Oh, bye, Hannah. Thank you. I was able to kind of see my students grow, and I think that's probably been one of the most rewarding experiences. So I was a I started in 2015 at University of Illinois Chicago, which is a public, R1 right in the city, and in a global Asian studies department, which is like a hybrid of Asian American studies and area studies or Asian studies. And so in my class, my hip hop, dance, and Asian American culture politics class, I'd have half of the students who are really good at dance or in the dance community, in the hip hop community, but have never taken an ethnic studies class. And then I have the other half of the students that are ethnic studies, minors, because that's the minor Asian, global Asian studies minors, but have never taken dance and are terrified of having to dance in front of people. I mean, like it, and really like they don't want to be held to that stereotype of being able to dance. And, it was a multiracial class too. So there's a lot of things that helped it kind of be a class where one group could teach the other or help the other see something that they haven't seen before, right? And so I think that was one of the most rewarding experiences, because as freshmen I could see them grow up to be seniors, and I still keep in contact with some of them post graduation, and some of them are part of Unipro, which is like a post grad Filipino. I don't know. Do people know what Unipro is? Give a thumbs up oh, okay. Okay, Google it or look it up, and I think you'll find that there's organizations and communities for Filipinos who want to continue their community development within the Filipino community as professionals. And so yeah, and so that's one of the ways that I've kind of been able to find a place. Here in Hawaii, I'm in the theater and dance department, so it's quite different, because it's a predominantly white institution or space. And so unlike in ethnic studies, I have to contend with a lot of different obstacles. So I have to identify when there's tokenism happening, tokenization, one of those, or I have to identify when there is, like check in with myself. Is there diversity fatigue? Am I being instrumentalized in some ways, or do I have a particular obligation, kuleana or utang, to raise my voice in a certain way? And so I think those are, that's what the drama of life is made of. But it's really interesting, and it's exciting to kind of train those tools and those skills.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Kind of how our identity plays a role in our jobs and everyday life. Like here at Southwestern, I think I'm one of like 5 Filipino American faculty or staff. And so, there was a older professor. I don't know if some of you know him. His name is Felix Tuye. He was kind of the go-to for anything, related to Filipino culture. And then he retired. And then all of a sudden, I have everybody asking me, "Oh, like Chris, can you do this? It's about Filipino American culture, history month, whatever it is." And I was like, I don't know anything. Like, and I'm learning on the fly, all this different stuff. But it is really like tokenism and understanding, how your background influences your job and what you do.
Yeah, I mean, those are the things that they don't really teach you, right? It's like they don't teach you this in grad school, how to deal with interpersonal, interfaculty, race and gender and sexual relations. And I think also with students too, I guess students, you should just be mindful. There are other students in the classroom that sometimes can have a negative impact on the professor. And so I think like we have to kind of, for me as a junior faculty member, I have to definitely think about um, the ways that I'm creating a space that's inclusive, but also not giving too much of myself, and to the point where I'm not seeing a long, sustainable, um, career road. Because at least for me, the institutional context really matters, and I think UCSD, you all are so fortunate to have the resources and the spaces that your elders and your professors, Professor Jojo, has created. And I say spaces with a cheesy Filipino dad joke intention. But there's not all the universities across the US or Filipino diaspora have that. And so you're kind of spoiled. No, I'm just kidding. No, really, like, so you have like opportunities that other folks don't. So I really, really encourage you to kind of like to utilize those, and in some ways, like think about maybe connecting to other universities that don't. Like when I mean, here in Hawaii, there is a large Filipino population, but it's not in parity to the K through 12 population. So there's already a disconnect in terms of educational attainment or educational access. And then on top of that, the content is another thing that we have to think about. So like what kind of dances are being taught, or what kind of culture is being included in the general education courses, and um, how is that advancing the interests of the Filipinx community, right? And so I think those are some of the things, like as a faculty member, and as I think about, I mean, I guess this is kind of getting to the how does Filipinx identity play a role in my life and in my research, is that it's really inextricable. There's really there's no way that I could really imagine like approaching, I mean, like if I see a person audition and they are like pinging my Filipino radar, I'm thinking, oh, this is like the only Filipino person auditioning. Like, I wonder what it means to them to see no other Filipino people audition, and in a state that has, you know, like 20% Filipinos in K through 12, you know, like, and so that means like 1 out of 5. And then nowadays, you know, I'm thinking about like after this, I'm going to go to this Filipino COVID cares working group, and Filipinos, I mean, Pacific Islanders first, and then Filipinos are disproportionately affected by COVID, right? And so in terms of research, like how does our research, our teaching, our community service um, have an impact or speak to those racial inequities that COVID has made ever more visible. So as a Filipinx QPOC person and faculty member, there's a privilege and obligation, you know, but there's also this kind of awareness that um, the other faculty members, like kind of like finding a way to develop allyship or develop whatever that means in your spaces, because you can't do it alone, I think. And so building, I use this term anti-racist kapwa. I don't know if people are going to use it. It's like my version of fetch. I keep trying to make it happen. But yeah, like developing anti-racist kapwa amongst your fellow people wherever you are, and kind of finding your this kind of goes into my tips for getting published that I didn't get to talk about earlier. I don't know if I could share my screen and show it to you all, because I guess this is getting into the how does the Filipino relate to your research. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so yeah, I didn't get to show this earlier, but I really think that it's important to approach. Um, I think about this with hip hop, and then I kind of apply it um, to my other aspects of life. You know, hip hop is a lifestyle or a life way. Can you see this screen? Okay. Yeah, and rather than just thinking of it as a dance, one of the reasons why I wanted to do research in hip hop is because I did kind of have a chip on my shoulder about how the term conscious hip hop artist only referred to MCs. And so as a dancer, as a choreographer, I felt like wait, that's not true. You know, like people are doing stuff in hip hop that are not MCs, that is about raising consciousness and about like promoting social change. And so I thought and social justice, and I thought that was one of the things that um, was the spaces that I could really have an impact. And in terms of getting published, that kind of helped me see like advocating more for a holistic approach to getting published or to writing a book, and thinking about it not just as like this transactional process, but really developing a social network, developing practices and habits, thinking about the ethical questions around your relationship to your subject or your interlocutor, and how does that ethical relationship change from the time that you're collecting data or doing your initial inquiries to even the time when you're delivering the product or the quote unquote deliverable, right? How am I calling in or inviting the conversation to include my interlocutors or my quote unquote subjects? And so even like right even now as the book is out, I still kind of question myself and think about, you know, oh, am I inviting cello A to come sit on the panel with me, which she is going to in a couple of weeks. But you know, like finding ways to continue that relationship, and rather than seeing it as an object and you're just producing an object, you're really developing this multiple relationships through your writing. And then thinking of yourself as an author, I think that's something really key, because for me, one of the aha moments or sort of like goosebumps moments of this process was looking at the publisher's website and seeing that the timeline of when Oxford was a university press was before Filipinx people were given literacy by white people, right? So it's like, and it's not that they were, that's the only moment in time. It's just like, wow, this is a major thing. I mean, we have our written language and our own stuff, but like the fact that we've been excluded from this realm of communication and from this occupation and profession, it speaks volumes. Like how many Filipinx authors are there really, you know? And I think that was one of the goosebump moments. Is like we need to really lift as we rise. We really need to think about finding ways to cultivate more authors, to see ourselves as storytellers and not just recycling the same formulas, whether it be a PCN formula or a story formula. Really thinking about taking care of our body to make it a long-term career, and then also imagining the ways that we can that we can get our ideas out there, right? And I think that's one of the kind of basic things that um, of of being Filipinx, how it has shaped my research is that, you know, it just me it's about finding, it's not about like chasing happiness, it's about finding meaning, right? And so the meaning of what I do every day is shaped by that.
Dr. Vito, if you want to add on to how your Filipinx identity has played a role in your life and your research.
Yeah, just to piggyback off Lorenzo, a lot of it is like the meaning and the community building. It's, thinking about the ways in which the work that I do is trying to help others and kind of lift everybody else up, kind of like what you were saying. My job isn't to like just promote my book or to write my research. I do it because it interests me. I think at the end of the day, the goal is, how can I help others in my community find their own interests, their own happiness, their own path per se, and just kind of facilitate that. And I think things like hip hop and all these aspects of culture, like the clothes we wear and our haircuts and shoes and all of this stuff, kind of is part of that storytelling and part of that identity that we want to share with each other and really connect with each other through. So that's kind of how I see this identity and my background kind of playing that role in education and in my community, especially here in San Diego.
Definitely. Thank you both so much for those awesome responses. It's been really awesome to like hear you both talk about your experiences. I'm not sure if y'all are on the document that I like sent, but I added a couple more questions if you want to answer those as well.
Great. I just want to jump in and say
Yep.
that, like I've interviewed, I did some research in the UK and in like in Europe, and some of the Filipinos in the European diaspora look at the San Diego Filipino dancers as models of like what's good, you know. And I was like, whoa, like San Diego, like dance, like Filipino dancers in San Diego are freaking, you know, like serving as uh you know, models of excellence in the way that people used to look at, I mean, people still do look at New York as sort of an epicenter, a cultural epicenter. But I think that's something that obviously like your generation and you all have so much, can take pride in a way, because there is a legacy of uh, Filipinos in hip hop, Filipinx in hip hop in San Diego. And some of the things that, some of the work that still needs to be done is, what does it mean? You know, like I didn't necessarily focus on a lot of the organizational, the legislative, the migrational history of San Diego Filipinx hip hop practitioners. And I think that's space for you all to grow and to think about. I know there's other folks that have done some dissertations on certain aspects, but I think those are some spaces that I think, even just institutional history, right? KP's history is an archive. It's an archive, and as Professor Jojo has written, like the All Stars has been part of that, and so it is part of that history, and it could be, you know, there could be 14 books. I'm counting the number of participants that come out of that.
The next question that we have, kind of going back to your own work, do you have a favorite quote or chapter from your own books?
I like how I can't even think of a quote from my own book, but I would have to probably go with the one I said at the beginning about hip hop isn't dead, but it's gravely ill. And, you know, that really stuck out to me because, you know, like I said, I think hip hop is a big part of a lot of people's lives and just music in general, dance, all of that stuff. And, you know, when Trisha Rose was saying that it's gravely ill, I don't think it was meant to be like harmful or detrimental, but just to get us to think about the ways in which culture like impacts us, right? You know, Lorenzo had talked about it. Like, you know, when I was younger, I didn't even think about this too much, but all my friends were in this dance crew. I don't know if anybody's heard of this, 220. Um, and all of my friends were in it. But at the time, it was something that was just part of my identity that I didn't really think about how it shaped me and you know, who I know and my behaviors. It was just kind of there. And, you know, when Trisha Rose says it's gravely ill, I think we have to look at every aspect of our own life and the world around us and kind of analyze it a little bit more. So that's definitely the quote I would say. Sorry I didn't give you enough time to look, Lorenzo, but I tried.
Yeah, you know what? I really worked on trying to get in some like juicy quotes in my book, and so I mean, I have one. Okay, so like my like I don't know if I could read it. Is that okay? I don't know. Okay, so it's not even, well, the beginning was like more about me describing the scene. So the scene of the Philippine All Stars at this convention in a mall. If has anybody been to SM City North EDSA? Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. So it's the block in SM City. So I don't know if I could read it, and then it's like a little passage. So maybe you can imagine yourself in there. Okay. Um, Being in the Philippines disorients me. In the late 1960s, my father dropped out of college and left the country. 40 years later, I found myself here. I was alone and doubting my decision to research the known birthplace of Asian hip hop as I transferred to my second jeepney. Stepping up and crouching down into the back, I squeezed my 6'2" frame between two passengers, clutching my dripping umbrella away from their pleated trousers. I passed my fare forward, and we drove away from Philcoa, the vernacular portmanteau for the gathering place of transportation options that lined the road in front of the Philippine Coconut Authority. Hand to hand, person to person, my grimy coins moved toward the front of the vehicle until they finally reached the driver, whose hand was cupped behind his right ear in anticipation. Once his palm closed, I looked in the rear view mirror and made eye contact with him to say, or mouthed rather. He nodded and scanned the streets. In a single year, Filipinos spend over 16 days in the traffic of Manila, the world's most densely populated city. And so I kind of wanted to give the reader a sense of the labor of ethnography, how much it takes a toll on you, but also how much there is in an exchange. Just getting on the road to go to your quote unquote site, to go to this concert and this performance. There's so many interactions. You have to really, I mean, for me, I'm bringing a duffel bag of my change of clothes. I'm bringing my sneakers. I'm bringing my tripod. I'm bringing my camera. You know, like you're sweating in the humidity. And then you're also trying to speak Tagalog or Filipino. And so I kind of go on to describe the atmosphere. Earlier that day, award-winning hip-hop performing artist Cello A had convinced me to endure the commute from Philcoa to SM City North EDSA, a shopping mall in Quezon City where Cello and others in the hip-hop community were putting on a show. In the way each of its 5 floors open up like concentric donuts into a center courtyard, this mall makes a joke out of its name, the block, and verges on the panoptic. Each offers a 360-degree view onto the central ground floor stage. This is where the concert of the world champion Philippine All-Stars dance crews to take place. Like many hip-hop artists, they started from the proverbial bottom, except theirs was global. High above, skylights pop and hundreds of folks hang unceremoniously on the railings, leaning inward with eyes on the stage. The dance floor is elevated and its clear backlit plexiglass surface seems like it would be cruel to misplace feet. The atmosphere is air-conditioned, clean and shiny, a sharp and welcome contrast from the smoggy, muggy bustle just beyond the shopping center's doors. And after all, malls do have meaning in Filipino society besides mass consumerism. Perhaps this is because malls are where folks go to escape the seemingly unavoidable moisture, whether summer, sweat, or unrelenting rain. The sweet and sour mix of mangoes and muddy water. Malls are the familiar words on radiant jeepneys placards that tell you its route. Malls are where urban bakla cruise potential mates. And as I learned firsthand one day, malls are where multinational companies actively recruit labor for overseas employment. So today in this mall, beside the Cultura Natives craft store and below a cinema, the Manila dance community was taking center stage.
Thank you for sharing that. I think we have time for one more of the questions that I had, and then we'll open it up to an open Q&A, and anyone else has questions can unmute or send in the chat. But for the last like preset question, do you have any advice for college students unsure of their career path or thinking about pursuing grad school?
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, I try to keep it simple. I just tell students, use that time in college to kind of explore. Don't be afraid to explore. Because I know for me, if I didn't go back to school, if I was too afraid to go back to school after getting my college degree, I would have never found sociology. I kind of just got really lucky. I had like 12 units left before I was about to graduate. And I took that sociology class just to fulfill upper division GE course. So it was like one of the last things that the counselor told me to take. And, if I didn't take that leap to kind of quit my job and go back to school, I paid out of pocket. I actually worked at a warehouse for 4 years to pay for to pay for school. And then until I got to my PhD. And, I tell students, don't be afraid because, that leap can take you pretty much as far as you want it to. You can kind of study any topic. Don't set yourself with boundaries because maybe 10 years ago, if somebody told me you're going to study like barbershops for a living, they probably would have said I was crazy. But here I am. So definitely no boundaries. Just do what makes you happy, what you're interested in. That'd be my advice.
Yeah, I would agree about that. I think for me, the path was all about like knowing what doesn't work a lot of the time and moving away from that. And so like being okay with kind of checking in with yourself about, does this work or does it not work, and not really not going on autopilot. So yeah, the metaphor of the road is really appropriate. Find your lane, but know what the rules of the road are. So, you know, you can't just be Van Gogh like off on day one. You know, you got to learn what's the name of that paint color, or what are the types of brushes can you have, right? Or what's the software, the hardware that you need to use to solve that problem. I think one thing that I have learned from, I go to a lot of like, or I attend a lot of like workshops on the nuts and bolts of this, or how to do this, or, you know, self-help stuff. I think one of the things is, you know, like listening to podcasts, finding resources, but being aware of one level above you, like what's one league above you and what's one league below you. So get to hear that advice about, like, if you're an undergrad, try to hear what the grad students are listening to or what they're reading, so that you just know what's going to be down the line, and you're not just kind of caught off guard and swimming along the same, or driving along the same types of cars that you're always driving along, right? And then also look at what the high schoolers are learning. What are the high schoolers getting into? What are the people that are the seniors that you might look down upon or underestimate, but you know what? They might be your boss. So you never know. They might be starting up a new tech company that you want to be part of. So I would say, like, really keep an eye on, I mean, you don't have to like just dibble dabble into those, the league above, league below. You don't have to like focus that. I mean, obviously, keep your both hands on the wheel.
Yeah, and I would say like don't even be afraid to ask questions or bug people, because I found that when I was in college, I was scared to ask my professors or grad students like questions I had, and then when I realized when I asked them, most of them will talk to you for like an hour because then they're just talking about themselves and their experiences. So you know, don't be scared to do that.
Thank you both for the great advice. We'll start going into the open Q&A now. We have two questions in the chat. The first one is, what was the most impactful mentor moment y'all have had in your careers?
Okay, I guess I'll go first. So my mentor moment, I had a professor at San Diego State. He's gonna hate me when if you ever take his class, but you can tell him I told him the story. I actually went into his office, Jung Min Che, who teaches sociology at San Diego State. I remember I came into his office and I asked him, I really wanted to learn sociology, and I think he had like 10 students behind me, and so he was like in a rush, and he just gave me a book and he said, "Come back next week." And I was like, I don't understand what's going on. So he just gave me his book. So I went home and I read it. And then I came back and he's like, tell me what you learned. And I just told him. He gave me like 10 minutes. And then he didn't say anything. And he just gave me another book and he's like, I'll see you next week. And then I did that for a whole semester. And then I just never stopped bugging him. And I thought that was really cool because he kind of knew my personality from class. And he knew that if he just gave me a book, I would read it. You know, he didn't have to really like, you know, mentor me because I was already wanting to learn. And I just kind of stuck with him after that for like the next 5 years. And now I can't leave him alone. So that's how it goes.
That's great. Yeah, I kind of mentioned my experience at Berkeley with Dr. Christine Palmer. You know, like I just remember there's sort of like a slideshow of your life in your mind. And I think when I graduated high school, three of my elementary school teachers attended my graduation, Mrs. Holzman, Mrs. Terrio, and Mrs. Miller, who I had twice because it was one of those cluster classes with third and fourth graders. Anyway, I also had in undergrad, not in grad, in grad school, I had two chairs, right? Because I'm an interdisciplinarian, so I was at in Asian American Studies, I had Victor Bascara or Dr. Victor Bascara at UCLA, and then also Dr. Susan Leigh Foster, who's like the quote unquote mother of dance studies. And so for me, like the mentoring was a balance of the two. Like in some ways, like I couldn't find, I think there's this concept of there's no one mentor that's going to be everything to you, but you might have a 10% mentor here, a 1% mentor here, a 50% mentor there, and kind of finding those ways to get what you need out of mentorship um, would be is kind of like a good approach. I know in undergrad we had a Kuya Ate Adding mentorship program. I went outside and I adopted one of my Addings, and he's one of my best friends until this day. So I think, yeah, and then I introduced him to my other best friend, and now I'm the godfather of both of their kids. So I guess that's one of my biggest mentorship programs, because it was this amazing time. Like, he actually is from here, born and raised here. And then when I went to when I started to go to grad school here, he was going to do a internship in DC, and he actually had a plane flying out the same day I had a plane flying in. And so his mom, Auntie Charlene, dropped him off and picked me up with the same ride, with the same drive. And she said, "Oh, Chris is in gate 28. Go say bye to him." And so I was like running from my gate after I just arrived. Um, yeah, so I think one of those things is like, one is like create mentorship. Don't just expect it to happen, or don't just expect there to be a structure. If there's not a structure, make a structure, even for your own peers or people that are one level below you. And then again, pay back or pay forward. Like for my mentor, Dr. Foster, I made a calendar, and I actually contacted all of her mentees or advisees, and I created a calendar for her for this year, just because I know I thought it would be nice for her to have like a calendar from Costco or CVS. I don't remember where I got it. Of the pictures of her mentees, even though I don't know these people, some of them are from way like her previous career in the East Coast. But I think pay it forward and pay it back to your mentors, because they're going to cherish it, and it's a two-way street.
Thank you both. There's another question from Angel. Who are y'all's favorite hip hop artists and why?
All right, so I'll go first. So mine is, I would say, Immortal Technique, just because I've written quite a few articles about him. So if you all are interested, and I can send that article to everyone as well. And I really like him just because of his political message, kind of the background and the time that he was making his music. But in my article, I talk about how while he has a lot of good political messages and economic messages, there's still remnants of, the old school hip hop that's very misogynistic. There's a lot of tension there, and there's a lot of stuff to analyze because his lyrics are different, to say the least. I don't know if anyone's checked him out before, but "Dance with the Devil" is probably his most famous song. That's the one that stuck with me. I think I was in like, I can't even remember how old I was, and I didn't even know what I was listening to back then, but definitely changed my life. So I would say for sure Immortal Technique.
I feel like this question could take another whole session because it's like, for what reason, like to work out or to do research or to chill with, like I could go clubbing with cello, but I can work out to Bamboo's Prayer and Welcome to, or like some of his other tracks. And I can, I don't know, attend a show or take a class by members of the crew. I like watching the success of Keone. So it's just like, I feel like for me, there is a lot of, wait, I'm actually like trying to revisit the question. Favorite word?
I'll just say you made my answer like 10 times harder right now, because now I thought of all these other artists that I like Ruby Ibarra, and there's this local artist, Stray Cat. Now I'm like thinking, who do I listen to?
Yeah, I know one of my students was using, I thought it was really cool how my student used the title of Saweetie's song as the title of her presentation. And then it made me like the Saweetie song Tap, 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 Tap In even more. And I was like, oh my gosh, because she's a tap dancer and she was writing about tap dance. And I was like, oh, okay. Um, but yeah, I don't know much about Pilo. I'm sorry.
I actually like Philo. I listen to like it's always like it's like what you said. You listen to it for different reasons. I won't make like social commentary on Philo's music, but I'll listen to it in the car for sure.
I just realized now it didn't say Filipinx hip hop artist. It just said hip hop artist. Um,
Either of you want to add on for like in general, like non-Filipinx artists?
like I'm kind of getting into more like just mixes. So it's not really, it's kind of like decentering the artists. I don't know if that's too pretentious to say, but um I love the Eminem Godzilla with Juicy like to work out, and then I just started this playlist that's just all monster, like the theme is monsters, so then I put like Anaconda and King Kong and other kinds of like monster rap songs. I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then there's like the whole like mixing hip hop with like um like pop divas, like I'm really into that too. And then have you heard of like Tabata? It's like music that has like a countdown, like you work out for like 20 seconds and then you like rest for 20 seconds, and it just kind of keeps you like going and going and going. But then there's also like music that I play for my students because I just want to introduce them to new stuff. So yeah, I think that I'm always kind of looking for new new music that I've never heard. So if you all have any recommendations, please like help somebody that is much older than you learn.
Tying into what you just said, Dr. Buda, it looks like Gabe has a recommendation for you in the chat. He said, as people who are invested and very knowledgeable about hip hop culture and how Filipinos tie into that, am I able to plug a Filipino artist? I'd love to hear y'all's opinion on him sometime. And he sent their Spotify right there.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I was gonna say like even Drake had. I was trying to get to write an article with him. I just he hasn't. He's so busy. Like, but yeah, definitely. If any of you know any artists, especially local artists here in San Diego, send them my way. I would love to do like interviews, or I can collab with some of the people on this panel, like JoJo and Bernard. We can write like articles and do invest in the research, especially here in San Diego.
Yeah, if you would like to get in touch with Dr. Vito or Dr. Lorenzo, feel free to let me know. If it's okay with you too, I can share your emails. Okay, cool. And then for your feedback on the artist Gabe sent. Oh yeah, perfect. Just send it in the chat. You can either send it to me and I'll get it to Gabe, or if Gabe, you want to share your email with them, either works. We technically have some more time for open Q&A if anyone else has questions. I do have some forms to send in the chat right now. So the first one, I'm not sure if there's any high school students here. This event was open to them. If you are a high school student, please fill out the first form. It's like a shapes tracking form and just helps us keep track of high school students going to our events. And the second one, that's just a program evaluation form for this event. And if you would like to enter the book raffle, that's the form to fill out because it's like one of the questions at the end there. So yeah, if you're interested in winning a book, please fill out that one. And also Shapes, which is part of Spaces, is doing some programming for grad school events, and we're trying to get input on that. And if you're interested in grad school, please fill out that form so we can kind of structure our programs to what you would like to see. I can give y'all till like 7:50 to fill out whichever forms that you need to. And then if anyone else has questions, feel free to ask away still. I can go ahead and ask another one. I was thinking, since both of you are authors, like how did your parents react to you pursuing that career, like as opposed to like nursing or something in STEM? Like were they supportive of you pursuing a career like kind of in humanities?
Oh yeah, I can answer that. My mom was really supportive. The rest of my family, maybe not so much. And I think one thing that stood out to me was my mom definitely stuck up for me. So, whenever I had uncles and aunties tell me like, "Oh, you're supposed to be a nurse," or whatever, my mom always told them, he can do whatever makes him happy. And I always thank her for that every day, because I was like, oh, I don't think I want to be an accountant for the rest of my life. So I think of my mom whenever I'm doing paperwork or doing my taxes.
Yeah, I think that it develops and it changes depending on what stage or phase of writing I'm in or scholarship I'm in. So, for instance, when I was doing field work in the Philippines, my parents came because my dad's 40th anniversary um, was during that year. So I was able to spend time in the Philippines in my dad's hometown, whereas my siblings were not able to do that. And so I think that, there were some times they definitely question like, why are you studying Filipino language? Um, and then it kind of called into question like my upbringing and the lack of um, that being taught at home. So I think that, I mean, in interesting ways, obviously they're super proud of the final, or of where it's at right now. There's definitely some questions because it's like us, like we don't know what's going to happen. Like we don't know, it's an experiment. We don't, like, they don't know anybody that has done a PhD on hip hop, or so it's like it's one of those things where you just have to kind of find ways to manage their expectations.
Thank you both again. Does anyone else have any more questions, or does anyone else need time for the forms? I saw a thumbs up from Gabe. Okay, well, I guess I can go ahead and just do the book raffle already. I can share my screen so y'all know I'm not being biased. So for how we'll do it is I'll go ahead and pick 4 names, and then the first 2 can pick which book that they'd like to receive, and then the second 2 will get the other book. So our first winner is
Oh,
Final Mario.
Lauren, really quickly, they're getting both books.
Oh, so just 2 winners then?
We have funding for 4 people to get 4 books. 2 books each, both books.
Oh, okay. Is that that wasn't what I put in like the program proposal. So
Oh, you got it. Right.
making sure then. Okay, cool. So we'll have 4 people getting both copies of each book. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Kuya Jojo, for clarifying. So congratulations, Almario. I'll be in contact with you to get your shipping information. Our second winner is oh wait, I should remove your name. Hold on, let me do that again. Okay, now our second winner is Joss. I think Joss had to go, but I'll contact her as well. Our third winner is Hannah. And then it's a 50-50 chance here, but let's see. All right, congratulations, Gabe. And that will conclude the end of this event. Thank you to everyone for being here today. Thank you so much to Dr. Lorenzo Perillo and Dr. Christopher Vito. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your days to speak with us and share your experience and advice. Kuya Jojo, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just make sure for all the undergrads to fill out the tracking form. I know there was a couple high school students here earlier, so we'll contact them. But if you are an undergrad at UCSD, please fill out the evaluation form for our purposes. And if you are interested in the graduate program, like Lauren said, we are also giving out iPads and free GRE, MCATs, and LSATs as part of the incentive for you to pursue graduate school. So hopefully, please talk to me if you have any interest. We also are giving out free GRE, MCATs, LSATs, and GMAT books. Yeah, Lorenzo, unlike UCLA's CPO, where Spaces is amazing.
All right. Thank you again, everyone. Hope you all have a good rest of your week. Good night and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Oh, thank you for attending.